Greetings, it is I, Countess Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time to continue my discussion on D20 Modern, the modern take on the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. So where we last left off, we were talking about combat and vehicles. I talked about all the maneuvers and stunts you can do in a vehicle. Let's talk about collisions. Now, a collision occurs when you hit something else. Whether it's a stationary object or another vehicle, it's going to do damage to your vehicle. The amount of damage that's going to be taken in your vehicle is dependent on the size of the vehicle and the speed you're traveling. If it's two vehicles that are colliding, you're going to use the highest speed of the two vehicles and the smallest size of the two vehicles when determining what kind of dice of damage it is. Basically, the size is going to determine the dice. The speed is going to determine how many of those dice you're going to be dealing to each other. This again works for objects too, but an object is a solid thing that's there. And again, it's similar. Smallest thing is going to be used, and then the highest speed. In that case, it's probably going to be the vehicle if it's the object you're hitting. Of course, the driver can make a DC 15 reflex save for half of this damage. Now, once the two have collided, they're going to continue moving. You drop 2 categories of speed, and effectively then you move up to the minimum distance for that speed. If you ran out of squares, you're just going to stop your movement. You don't move as far as you need to do. But if you still have some movement, you'll move that minimum. You'll basically keep going after this collision has occurred. Now, once a collision has occurred, though, the driver has to make a DC 15 drive check in order to maintain control. That's to see if they are maintaining control, which I'll talk about in a second. Everyone within the vehicle can still make a DC 15 reflex save also to half the damage to themselves, because they're going to be taking damage from the crash too. Now, the thing is, though, this damage can be multiplied based on circumstances with the vehicles. There's a table that lists multiplications that might be more advantageous and might not be more advantageous, might be disadvantageous to you. And basically, you're going to multiply the damage by that before applying it to the vehicle or anybody within it and figuring out before the reflex saves even. This is just going to be multiplication that may occur depending on the type of collision that you're having. Now let's talk about control, because you are going to have to make drive checks to maintain the control of your vehicles pretty often. When you do, if you succeed, you're fine. You control the vehicle. If you fail, you're going to go into a spin. If you fail by 10 or more, it's a roll. Now, for what a spin is, you're going to move a number of squares equal to the basic base for your speed, and then you're going to kind of go to a stop, and you're going to effectively make a roll of a D8 and determine your new facing. This is on the character scale. On the chase square, you move 1 square and you roll a D8 for your new facing. So it's a lot simpler on the chase scale, but you can do it on either scale. Now for a roll, well, that's a little more, you are going to move a similar number of squares, but effectively you're going to end up perpendicular to where you were before. You'll just roll to figure out which side you're kind of going to be, but you're going to be exactly perpendicular to where you were. You're going to roll forward into that position. Now that's on the character scale, you're going to be moving your basically minimum for the speed you're going to roll that and end up in your perpendicular position. For the chase scale, you're going to move 1 square and end up in that perpendicular position. The vehicle will take 2d6 times the turn number for the speed you were damage. Players with inside will take 2d4 times that same number. So you're going to be taking a bunch of damage, but both can have reflex DC 15s for half, both the vehicle and the people within it. So there are ways to avoid some of that damage on the roll. Now let's talk about hiding in a vehicle. Well, it's really not that the vehicle you're hiding within it, is that the vehicle itself is hiding. You can do that. You can get in a position where you're using traffic or turning around a corner or something and making a hide check successfully to avoid being detected. It's perfectly fine, and you're going to use it against your opponent's ability to spot you and see you making this sort of turn. Now granted, you can also use bluff to try to trick someone. What this would do is you'd use it against the sense motive of the target vehicle, of whoever's driving it, and if you successfully bluff them, like usually using traffic or something, usually it would be something like, I'm on a highway and I'm pretending not to get off a ramp, and then I suddenly do it. Something like that. They would get -5 to their drive checks in order to attempt any kind of maneuvers in order to follow you. Basically, you're making it more difficult for them to continue to follow you. You're trying to turn off something. The off-ramp example is probably the best one because that's the hardest to follow someone on. That's the one that you really are thinking about. But any kind of maneuver similar to that, where you're making a maneuver that it's hard for your opponent who's chasing you to follow you, that you're sort of tricking them into doing something, they're going to get that -5. Let's talk a little bit about attacking from a vehicle. You as a person can attack with your personal weapons out of a vehicle. Or, if you want to, you as a driver or a gunner can control the weapons of the vehicle. The only thing you have to remember here is, in this case, the driver is not going to get a full attack. They have to use a move action to control the vehicle. Now, granted, if they could use a basic full attack action, if they would start it on one turn and complete it on another if they're given that option. Because normally you're going to get all the normal moves that you get during a turn. You get your free action, you get your move action, you get your attack action, or you would get your 2 move actions, or you would be able to give a full round action. These are the normal things you can do on a turn. You can use them. Again, there's exceptions with like the driver who doesn't have that option really, but also you're limited the number of free actions by your GM as usual. Now, when you're talking about a vehicle and you're talking about one that's controlled by NPCs, there's an easier way of dealing with them rather than statting them all out. It's coming up with a crew quality. Crew quality is something that's going to be a shortcut for your GM in order to make it easier for them. They basically assign a quality to a crew, and it tells you the modifier to that group of characters using that vehicle, their drive checks, and any attacks they make out of it, what the general modifier to those would be. The better the crew, the better they are at both driving it and better about attacking with it. Granted, a game master can customize this as much as they want. They could come up with their own custom crew. They could stat them out individually if that's something that really makes a difference and have a list of NPCs. It might be more important crews would be like that. That if you're going against a certain group of enemies that are your rivals, you're probably going to have them more individually stat out rather than using the crew quality. Now, they list a whole bunch of vehicles in the book and give the basic crew qualities to them. Effectively, they list the vehicle, they tell you its crew quality, how many members are of that crew, what the initiative modifier of that vehicle is, and what the maneuver modifier of that. These are standards for these vehicles. And again, you can have customs where perhaps the vehicle is customized a little bit, perhaps the crew is customized a little bit, and that would be up to your DM to alter them appropriately to what is needed for the campaign. But effectively, these are the basics that they can use to quickly reference something. And it makes it speed up things if they just want to look at, oh, a group of guys in this vehicle, what would they be like? That's what they're going to be. They're done. And even altering the crew could be pretty easy. Oh, this is the normal crew quality. Oh, you know what? This is a very much elite crew. That's the new crew quality. Bam, I've got this information done quickly and efficiently. So that's it for today. I introduced you to, of course, the collision that your vehicle may get into. You might hit something. And I talked about losing control and going into a spin or rolling. And I talked a little bit about, of course, hiding your vehicle or bluffing someone and tricking them and trying to outmaneuver them that way. I moved into attacking from the vehicle, talking about just generalized attacking with and from the vehicle, and did talk about just the easy-to-use crew qualities that your GM might use to speed things up when using a vehicle as NPCs. Or perhaps that you're controlling some NPCs on your side, that they have another vehicle that, would work with you. Both are very good options. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about attack options when it relates to vehicles, damaging vehicles, and of course, repairing vehicles. So if any questions, comments, anything you say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows you support the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.